Today we're finally building the new baseplate behind the gatehouse. Quite a few of you have actually asked for this expansion, and after spending so much time on the barracks, it was the perfect time to work on something different. But before we get to that, we are going to finish the tower over here. Hi, I'm Jasper from CastleStube. Here we are building a huge LEGO medieval castle, brick by brick. Just like on the other sections of this outer wall, I'm covering this part of the facade with vegetation. This mix of green and light green plant elements gives the impression of climbing plants, instead of just randomly placed leaves everywhere. The bright light orange flowers then add a nice splash of color against the grey walls. I'm also adding ingot pieces to the remaining studs. It's a simple little detail, but it makes the stone wall feel much more textured. Ultimately, the tower's battlement still needs a proper floor, so I'm adding a pattern that I think matches the one used on the walls. But I also wanted a few more details on the top of the tower, so I added something my castle doesn't have nearly enough of. A banner in the Black Falcon's colors, making it immediately clear which faction this castle belongs to. The banner itself is actually pretty easy to build. I used two 2x3 plates with the cutout, added a few tiles and curved slopes on top, and attached the whole thing with a single clip. And of course, nothing is complete without the obligatory barrels. This time I'm also adding some old LEGO brown javelins. On top of the tower, a crossbowman is keeping watch, scanning the surrounding landscape for any suspicious activity. Meanwhile, a spearman guards the entrance to the platform. And now the tower finally feels complete. And as I mentioned in the intro, I want to shift the focus to the area behind the gatehouse, where I'll be starting work on a complete new baseplate. Just as a quick disclaimer, at this point in the video, I hadn't actually planned what I wanted to build here yet. I only had a rough idea because this module has to fit in with the surrounding ones. So I knew this baseplate would have to be built up to a higher level since the castle sits on a mountainside. I'll go a bit more into details later when some progress has been made on this plate. Even though it's definitely not the cheapest approach, I still want every module to look good from all sides. I like to build them as if the LEGO world has simply been cut away at the edges. That means every visible side on every module gets the correct wall colors, starting with a layer of black bricks at the very bottom. Take a look at this 4x4 corner brick I found in my collection. According to Bricklink, this piece was only produced between 1955 and 1969, and yet, more than 50 years later, I can still use it in a brand new LEGO build. Okay, I have to admit that most of the colorful parts hidden inside the build aren't brand new. Recently, I've been trying to buy more used LEGO from the flea markets to save some money. Surprisingly, a lot of it has barely been played with, so it's usually in really good condition. That said, I can't build the whole castle this way. As soon as I need specific parts or colors, there's really no way around placing another Bricklink order. With the foundation finished, I use large dark bluish grey panels to make quick progress on the outer walls of this module. This time, there's no addition to the tunnel system underneath. Instead, I've got something even more interesting planned for this area, but more on that later. I also watch other large LEGO YouTubers, and it's always interesting to see how they've optimized the inside of their builds. Many of them use door frames or other large elements to fill empty space and gain height much more efficiently. I'm gradually becoming more efficient as well, but I still feel there's plenty of room for improvement. One reason is that I usually build with the parts I already have instead of buying specific elements for the hidden interior, which makes it difficult to settle on one consistent building approach. And here, the overall idea for this module. It will feature a road leading down to connect two different height levels within the castle courtyard. For now, I just want to explain the concept behind it. We'll take a closer look at the building techniques a little later. This idea has actually been part of the castle from the very beginning. If you look at the gatehouse module, you can already see the different height levels that I introduced back then. My plan is to expand the castle towards the right on a lower level, while the left side has the high ground. Yes, just like Obi-Wan in episode 3. The upper castle will be home of the noble and the clergy, the king, the priests, wealthy families, and of course the military. It simply makes sense to keep the soldiers close to the king. As a result, this part of the castle will feature larger stone buildings, a church, and stronger fortifications overall. This is also where I'm currently planning to build the stables. I think it makes perfect sense to have them right behind the main gate, where visitors can leave their horses before entering the castle. The lower level, on the other hand, will belong to the common people. I want it to feel like a lively medieval town with open squares, market stalls and workshops for all kind of craftsmen, bakers, tailors, portion brewers and whatever else you think belongs in a medieval town. If you've got any ideas, let me know in the comments. Naturally, there will also be houses, and in many cases the craftsmen will live directly above their own workshops. And just to set the right expectations, I casually listed all these ideas in a minute, but they'll probably keep this series going for the rest of the year at least. Alright, let's talk about some of the building techniques. I think I might have given myself the biggest challenge of this project so far. This road has to connect two different height levels, so naturally it needs to be a slope or stairs. Unlike the path leading up to the gatehouse from the very first episode, where the incline is created by stacking plates like little steps, this time I'm creating an actual sloped surface. On top of that, the road also has to turn around a corner instead of simply going straight downhill. You might have already noticed that I'm using clips and bars to create the slope. They let me adjust the angle almost freely. For the corner of the road, I'm relying on hinges and of course our beloved wedge plates. At this point, I feel like I've become a bit of a wedge plate expert. The road itself will also have fortified walls, maybe even with granulations. I want it to look as if it was carved directly into the rock, with retaining walls on both sides. At the same time, it still needs to feel like a natural part of the castle, rather than just a road through the mountain. I don't want there to be a gap between the different angled sections of the road, because that would expose the colorful inner part of the LEGO world. With all the different angles and slopes, that's actually more challenging than it might seem. Luckily, LEGO introduced jumper plates decades ago. They allow me to minimize the gap between the different road sections. Later on, I'll also add the final road surface, which should help hide the remaining gaps even better. For the road surface, I want to carry over the pattern from the road outside the castle. Another idea I had was to pave the entire road with cobblestones. From what I know, important roads in medieval towns were often paved with natural stone. I'll have to do a bit more research before I decide. Either way, fine-tuning the road and the entire area behind the gatehouse will have to wait until the next update. Do you have any must-haves that you'd like to see in this area? As I mentioned earlier, I wanted that downhill road to feel as if it has been carved directly into the rock. So I'm using my usual approach of combining different slopes and inverted slopes to create a rugged rock face in dark bluish grey, just like on the rocks outside of the castle. Above that, the rock gradually transitions into light bluish grey stone walls with arches, making it look as if the walls were built directly on top of the natural rock formation, adapting to its uneven surface. On the upper part of the wall, I'm using 1x6 arch elements to give it a more consistent finish. Instead of looking like a random pile of stones, this looks more like a proper castle masonry. As I mentioned earlier, I still haven't decided whether to add crenellations along the top of the wall. Do you think they would improve the look, or should I leave the walls without them? Here is some footage of me experimenting with a second incline using more clips. The idea was to make this section a little less steep, because where it joins the next section, the angled wedge plates create a visible gap. Now that I'm recording this voiceover, I've actually come up with another solution that might avoid this problem entirely. Unfortunately, I figured that out a little too late for this update, so you'll probably see that change in the next one. In the end, this idea turned out to be a dead end, so I reverted the changes and settled on a different solution, for now. I'm also considering adding a small gate, or maybe even a pair of towers at the bottom of the slope. That way, access to the upper part of the castle could be controlled, allowing only the people who are actually supposed to be there. Right now, ideas for this castle are coming faster than I can actually build them. Someone really needs to stop me. Here, I'm working with brackets again. Building with brackets is definitely an area where I have a lot to learn. The real challenge isn't using them, it's thinking of the right part at the right moment. Nowadays, LEGO has so many different elements available that it's almost impossible to keep every useful part in the back of your mind while building. The road leading down into the lower part of the castle needs more space than this baseplate can provide. Luckily, the 45-degree wedge plates give me a fairly clean way to end the road at the edge of the module. Connecting it to the next baseplate will definitely be an interesting challenge, but that's still quite a long way off. Space is already a real issue since a long time, and if you take a look at how much empty space I still have to work with, there's plenty left to fill. So, before expanding the castle any further, I'd much rather focus on filling this area first. For example, with a stable. With the road section finished, it's time to work on the upper castle courtyard. I need to fill the ground on this level using dark tan plates and wedge plates, ideally without leaving any gaps. And if you're wondering why the dark tan plates are getting smaller and smaller, you can probably guess why. Once again, I'm running out of the larger dark tan plates. Again. I also need to finish the module's outer walls and, last but not least, the retaining wall separating the upper courtyard from the road leading down into the lower part of the castle. And for this wall I'm using my usual combination of masonry bricks, modified bricks with studs on the side, ingot tiles and regular light bluish grey bricks and plates. Here I'm adding another attachment point to secure the curved section of the road to the baseplate using another swivel hinge. I always love it when I find a second or even third place to anchor these angled sections, because that's really not something you can take for granted. I could probably break out the Pythagorean theorem and calculate everything properly, but honestly I'd rather keep experimenting until it fits. Speaking of things that fit, what definitely doesn't fit is the camel head I used in here. And did any of you spot the pear tree element along the way? Honestly, I have no idea what to do with these parts, so they have a permanent home in the colorful museum hidden inside the rocks. While I'm finishing the remaining support structure and covering the upper level with dark tan plates, this update is slowly coming to an end. I hope this update was interesting, not just because of the building, but also because of the ideas and planning behind this part of the castle. Maybe you even picked up a building technique or two along the way. Apart from finishing the tower at the beginning, there weren't any spectacular buildings or tiny details this time. This update was all about laying the groundwork for what's coming next. But that's exactly what this series is about. I show everything, brick by brick. And in the next update, I'll start bringing this area to life with plenty of smaller details, buildings and minifigures. I might even start with the stables. The more I think about it, the more I like that idea. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas and suggestions in the comments. And if you'd like to follow the progress of this castle, consider subscribing for future updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, the castle keeps growing, brick by brick.